A struggling teacher was fired for protecting a poor child, but her new principal changed everything. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Riverside Elementary as 30-year-old Victoria Hayes walked slowly toward the main office, her brown leather bag clutched tightly in her hands. Her shoulder-length auburn hair caught the light as she moved, and though her gray cardigan and dark jeans were simple, she carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had always tried to do what was right, even when it cost her dearly. Behind her, the sound of children's laughter echoed from the playground, a bittersweet reminder of why she had chosen teaching in the first place. Today was her last day at Riverside Elementary, and the circumstances of her departure weighed heavily on her heart. 3 days ago, Victoria had made a decision that had ended her career at the school. When she discovered that 8-year-old Marcus Thompson had been coming to school hungry, wearing the same clothes for days, and falling asleep at his desk, she had done what felt natural to her. She had quietly provided him with snacks from her own lunch, helped him wash his clothes in the school's utility sink, and allowed him to rest during recess when he was too tired to concentrate. But Victoria's kindness had violated school policy when the administration discovered she had been enabling a student's truancy by not immediately reporting his situation to social services and creating an unfair advantage. By providing him with food and care that other students didn't receive, they had given her a choice: resign quietly or face formal disciplinary action that would go on her permanent record. Victoria had chosen resignation, not because she believed she was wrong, but because she couldn't bear the thought of Marcus suffering while bureaucratic processes played out. The boy needed help now, not after weeks of investigations and paperwork. As she approached the office to turn in her keys and collect her final belongings, Victoria tried to push down the bitter disappointment that had been growing in her chest. She had spent 6 years at Riverside Elementary, watching children grow and learn, celebrating their successes and supporting them through their struggles. To leave this way, branded as someone who couldn't follow proper procedures, felt like a betrayal of everything she believed teaching should be. What Victoria didn't know was that her story had reached the ears of 42-year-old Dr. James Crawford, the newly appointed principal of Westbrook Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the city. Dr. Crawford had salt and pepper hair that spoke of experience and wisdom, and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses that suggested he saw beyond surface appearances to the heart of matters. Dr. Crawford had heard about Victoria's situation through the tight-knit community of educators in their district, when a colleague mentioned that teacher at Riverside who got fired for feeding a hungry kid. Something had stirred in his chest. Not disapproval, but recognition. Here was a teacher who had prioritized a child's immediate needs over administrative convenience, who had chosen compassion over compliance. That evening, Dr. Crawford sat in his home office, reviewing Victoria's professional file that a mutual colleague had shared with him. Her teaching evaluations were consistently excellent, her students showed remarkable academic growth under her guidance, and parent feedback praised her warmth and dedication. But it was the incident that had led to her resignation that told him everything he needed to know about her character. "Margaret," he said to his wife over dinner, "I think I've found our new 5th grade teacher." His wife, a retired educator herself, looked up from her salad with interest. "The position hasn't even been posted yet." "It doesn't need to be," Dr. Crawford replied, his voice carrying the quiet certainty that had made him an effective leader. "Sometimes you find exactly what you're looking for before you even know you're looking for it." The next morning, Victoria sat in her small apartment, staring at her laptop screen as she searched for teaching positions. The process felt overwhelming and disheartening. How could she explain her departure from Riverside Elementary without seeming either defensive or unprofessional? How could she convince another school district that she was worth hiring when her last employer had essentially labeled her a liability? When her phone rang with an unknown number, Victoria almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up on the 4th ring. "Miss Hayes, this is Dr. James Crawford from Westbrook Academy. I was wondering if you might have time to meet with me this afternoon to discuss a teaching opportunity." Victoria blinked, certain she had misheard. Westbrook Academy was the kind of school where teachers typically had advanced degrees from prestigious universities and years of experience at elite institutions. She was a public school teacher with a state university education and a recent professional scandal. I think there might be some mistake, Dr. Crawford. I'm not sure I'm the kind of candidate Westbrook Academy typically considers. Dr. Crawford's warm chuckle came through the phone. Miss Hayes, I believe you're exactly the kind of teacher we need. Would 2 o'clock work for you? Victoria arrived at Westbrook Academy feeling underdressed and out of place. The school's ivy-covered brick buildings and manicured grounds spoke of generations of privilege and tradition. Students in crisp uniforms moved between classes with the kind of confidence that came from knowing they belonged in such a place. Dr. Crawford met her in the main lobby, and Victoria was struck immediately by his genuine warmth, despite his formal attire and obvious authority. There was something approachable about him that put her at ease. "Thank you for coming, Miss Hayes," he said, shaking her hand with the kind of firm grip that suggested he took her seriously as a professional. "I know this must seem like an unusual request." As he led her through the school's hallways, Victoria noticed the differences from Riverside Elementary immediately. Here, classroom sizes were small, resources were abundant, and every surface spoke of careful maintenance and attention to detail. But she also noticed something else. The students seemed somewhat insulated, moving through their privileged environment without the scrappy resilience she had loved about her public school kids. Crawford's office was impressive but not intimidating, filled with books and family photographs that spoke of a life dedicated to education and family. He gestured for Victoria to take a seat in one of the comfortable chairs across from his desk. "Miss Hayes," he began, settling into his own chair, "I want to start by saying that I've heard about the circumstances of your departure from Riverside Elementary." Victoria felt her heart sink. "Dr. Crawford, if I could just explain." He held up a gentle hand to stop her. "You don't need to explain anything to me. What I heard tells me everything I need to know about the kind of teacher you are." Victoria looked at him with confusion. "I'm not sure I understand." Dr. Crawford leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "Miss Hayes, you saw a child in need and you helped him. You put his immediate welfare above administrative procedures and bureaucratic convenience. That tells me you understand what teaching is really about. But I violated school policy," Victoria said quietly. "I created problems for the administration. You created problems for people who had forgotten that schools exist to serve children, not the other way around." Dr. Crawford replied firmly. "The question is, would you do it again?" Victoria met his eyes directly. "If I saw a child who was hungry and tired and needed help, yes, I would do it again. But I would try to work within the system better, find ways to get official support for the child's needs." Dr. Crawford smiled, the expression transforming his face with warmth. "That's exactly the answer I was hoping for. Miss Hayes, I'd like to offer you a position teaching 5th grade at Westbrook Academy." Victoria felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "Dr. Crawford, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure I'm the right fit for a school like this. Your students come from a very different world than the children I've been working with." "Exactly," Dr. Crawford said, "and that's precisely why we need you." Over the next hour, Dr. Crawford explained his vision for Westbrook Academy. While maintaining its academic excellence and high standards, he wanted to broaden the school's perspective, to help privileged students understand their responsibilities to the broader community, and develop the kind of empathy that would make them effective leaders and good human beings. "Our students are academically gifted and well prepared for college," he said, "but many of them have never encountered real diversity of experience. They need teachers who can help them understand that intelligence and worth aren't determined by economic circumstances." Victoria found herself drawn into Dr. Crawford's vision, despite her initial reservations. "What would you expect from me in this role?" "The same thing you were doing at Riverside Elementary. Teaching children to learn, to think critically, and to care about each other. The only difference is that these children need to learn that their privilege comes with responsibility." As Victoria walked through the 5th grade classrooms, meeting students and observing classes, she began to see what Dr. Crawford meant. The children were bright and engaged, but there was something missing in their interactions, a certain awareness of the world beyond their protected environment. "We do community service projects," explained Mrs. Patterson, the teacher Victoria would be replacing due to retirement. "The children collect canned goods for food drives and organize fundraisers for various charities. but it's all very abstract to them. They give their parents money to worthy causes, but they've never met anyone who actually needs help. Victoria nodded, understanding the challenge. How do you teach empathy to children who have never experienced want? How do you help them understand the value of kindness when kindness has always been a given in their lives? Dr. Crawford mentioned that you're hoping to expand the school's community engagement, Victoria said. Mrs. Patterson smiled. That's why he hired you. I think he believes your background working with children from different economic circumstances will help you bridge that gap. Victoria accepted the position with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Westbrook Academy offered her not just employment, but the opportunity to influence young minds during their formative years, to help privileged children develop the kind of character that would make them forces for good in the world. Her first day at Westbrook Academy was an exercise in culture shock. The students arrived in chauffeur-driven cars or were dropped off by parents in luxury vehicles. Their uniforms were perfectly pressed, their backpacks were designer brands, and their casual conversation referenced vacation homes and European trips with the nonchalance of those who had never known anything different. But Victoria also noticed something else, a hunger in their eyes for something real, something meaningful beyond the material abundance that surrounded them. These children were smart enough to sense that there was more to life than what they had experienced, but they lacked the context to understand what that might be. Miss Hayes asked 10-year-old Catherine Pemberton during their first literature discussion, why do the characters in this story worry so much about money? Can't they just ask their parents for what they need? The question was asked with genuine curiosity. Not callousness, but it revealed the vast gap between Catherine's experience and the reality faced by most of the world's children. That's an excellent question, Catherine, Victoria replied, recognizing a teaching moment. Let's explore that together. What do you think would happen if someone's parents didn't have money to give them? As the discussion unfolded, Victoria watched her students grapple with concepts they had never considered. What did it mean to work for money? What happened when working wasn't enough to meet basic needs? How did children their age cope when they couldn't count on their families to provide everything they needed? Miss Hayes, said Marcus Wellington, a thoughtful boy who reminded Victoria of her former student Marcus Thompson. Are there really kids our age who don't have enough food? Yes, Marcus, there are, Victoria answered gently. In fact, many children right here in our city go to school hungry. The classroom fell silent as the students processed this information. Victoria could see the wheels turning in their young minds, trying to reconcile this reality with their own experience of abundance. Over the following weeks, Victoria began incorporating more discussions about social responsibility and empathy into her lessons. When they studied the Great Depression in history, she helped her students understand not just the facts and dates, but the human experience of economic hardship. When they read literature that dealt with themes of poverty or social justice, she guided them to connect emotionally with characters whose experiences differed vastly from their own. But it was Dr. Crawford's support that made Victoria's innovative approach possible. When some parents questioned why their children were spending class time discussing depressing topics, Dr. Crawford backed Victoria completely. Education isn't just about academic knowledge, he explained to concerned parents during a faculty meeting Victoria was invited to attend. It's about developing the whole person, intellectually, morally, and emotionally. Miss Hayes is helping our students become not just smart, but wise. Victoria's relationship with Dr. Crawford deepened as the school year progressed. He would often stop by her classroom to observe her teaching, not as a supervisor checking up on her, but as an educator genuinely interested in learning from her methods. You have a gift for making abstract concepts concrete, he told her one afternoon after watching her help students understand the concept of economic inequality through a classroom simulation. They're good kids, Victoria replied, straightening up from where she had been cleaning whiteboards. They just need help expanding their perspective. Dr. Crawford nodded, studying her face with the kind of attention that made Victoria suddenly aware of how much she had come to value his opinion. Victoria, can I ask you something personal? She nodded, curious about the shift in his tone. Why did you become a teacher? I mean, what drew you to education in the first place? Victoria considered the question, appreciating that he genuinely wanted to understand her motivations. My grandmother, she said finally. She raised me after my parents died, and she used to say that teaching was the only profession where you could change the world one person at a time. She believed that if you could help a child see their own potential and develop empathy for others, you were creating ripple effects that would last for generations. Dr. Crawford was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. She was. She taught me that kindness isn't just being nice to people. It's being willing to act on behalf of those who can't act for themselves. That's why I couldn't just report Marcus Thompson to social services and walk away. He needed immediate help, not bureaucratic intervention. And that's why I knew I had to hire you. Dr. Crawford said softly, Victoria, what you did at Riverside Elementary. It wasn't a professional mistake. It was exactly what a good teacher should do. As winter turned to spring, Victoria noticed significant changes in her students. Catherine Pemberton, who had started the year unable to understand why anyone would worry about money, was now organizing a clothing drive for children at a local homeless shelter. Marcus Wellington had convinced his parents to volunteer at a soup kitchen as a family activity. But the most profound change came in the form of a special project that Victoria proposed to Dr. Crawford, a partnership between Westbrook Academy and Riverside Elementary that would allow her privileged students to interact directly with children from different economic backgrounds. I want them to understand that intelligence, creativity, and worth aren't determined by circumstances, Victoria explained as she and Dr. Crawford reviewed her proposal in his office. My former students at Riverside Elementary are every bit as bright and capable as our students here. They just face different challenges. Dr. Crawford studied the proposal with the careful attention he gave to all matters affecting his school. This would be unprecedented, he said finally. Our board has never approved this kind of direct partnership with a public school. But, Victoria prompted, sensing there was more he wanted to say. But I think it's exactly what our students need, he said, looking up at her with admiration. Victoria, you're asking us to do something that will make some people uncomfortable. Are you prepared for that? Victoria thought about Marcus Thompson, wondering how he was doing at Riverside Elementary, whether anyone was making sure he had enough to eat and a chance to rest when he was tired. She thought about her Westbrook Academy students, bright and eager but sheltered from the realities that shaped most children's lives. Dr. Crawford, she said, comfort isn't really the goal of education, is it? Growth is, and growth requires being challenged to see beyond what we already know. The partnership program launched that spring with a series of joint activities between Victoria's 5th grade class at Westbrook Academy and a similar class at Riverside Elementary. The first meeting was held at a neutral location, the public library downtown, and Victoria watched nervously as her two worlds collided. Initially, the differences between the two groups of children were stark. The Westbrook Academy students arrived in their parents' luxury cars, while the Riverside Elementary students came on a rented school bus. The clothing, the backpacks, even the way the children carried themselves spoke of vastly different life experiences. But children have a remarkable ability to find common ground, and within an hour of working together on collaborative art projects, the economic differences had faded into the background. Victoria watched Marcus Thompson, who was thriving despite the challenges at home, help Catherine Pemberton with a particularly difficult math problem, while Catherine shared her high-quality art supplies without hesitation. Miss Hayes, Catherine said during lunch, Marcus is really smart. Why doesn't he go to a school like ours? It was exactly the kind of question Victoria had hoped her students would ask. What do you think, Catherine? Why might someone as smart as Marcus go to a different kind of school? As Catherine worked through the implications of her question, Victoria saw understanding dawn in her eyes. Intelligence wasn't the determining factor in where children went to school, opportunity was. Dr. Crawford, who had come to observe the partnership program, found Victoria during a quiet moment. This is remarkable, he said, watching as children from both schools worked together on a science experiment. Look at them. They're just kids being kids, learning from each other. That's all they ever were, Victoria replied. The circumstances were different, but the children are the same. Curious, creative, capable of kindness. As the partnership program continued throughout the spring, Victoria watched both groups of students grow in ways that went far beyond academic learning. Her Westbrook Academy students developed a deeper understanding of privilege and responsibility, while the Riverside Elementary students gained confidence from seeing that their ideas and abilities were valued by peers from different backgrounds. But perhaps the most significant change came in the attitude of the Westbrook Academy parents. Initially skeptical about their children interacting with those kinds of kids, many parents found their perspective shifting as they heard their children talk excitedly about their new friends and the things they were learning about different ways of life. Catherine talks about Marcus constantly, Mrs. Pemberton told Victoria during a parent conference. She's been asking if we can invite him to her birthday party. I have to admit, I was hesitant at first. Well, if he's important to Catherine, then he's important to us. The partnership program culminated in a joint presentation to both school communities, where students from both schools shared what they had learned about each other and themselves. Victoria stood at the back of the auditorium, watching her students from both schools present their findings with confidence and insight. "We'll learn that being smart doesn't depend on how much money your family has," announced Catherine, standing beside Marcus Thompson at the podium. "We learned that friendship is about caring about each other, not about having the same kinds of things." Marcus nodded, adding, "We'll learn that everyone has challenges, just different kinds, and we learned that we can help each other face those challenges if we're willing to try." As the presentation concluded and parents from both schools mingled in the lobby, Victoria felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Dr. Crawford beside her, his expression one of profound pride and satisfaction. "Victoria," he said quietly, "do you realize what you've accomplished here?" She looked around at the scene before them, children from vastly different backgrounds laughing together, parents who might never have spoken otherwise engaged in animated conversations, teachers from both schools sharing ideas and strategies. "We've reminded everyone that education is about more than test scores and college admissions," she said softly. "It's about developing human beings who understand their connection to each other and their responsibility to make the world better." Dr. Crawford nodded, then surprised her by taking her hand. "Victoria, I need to tell you something. This year, working with you, watching you transform, not just our students, but our entire school community, it's reminded me why I became an educator in the first place." Victoria felt her heart skip as she looked into his kind eyes. Over the months, she had found herself looking forward to their conversations, valuing his insights and support, and feeling a connection that went beyond their professional relationship. "James," she said, using his first name for the first time, "you took a chance on me when no one else would. You saw potential where others saw problems. That means more to me than I can express." "I saw a teacher who put children first," he replied. "And over this year, I've come to see so much more. Victoria, would you consider having dinner with me? Not as colleagues, but as people who care about each other." Victoria smiled, the expression lighting up her face with joy. "I would love that." Their first date was at a small restaurant near the school, where they talked for hours about education, family dreams, and the unexpected paths that had brought them together. Victoria learned that Dr. Crawford had become a principal because he believed schools could be forces for social change, and he discovered that Victoria's passion for teaching came from a deep well of empathy and hope for the future. "You know," James said as they walked through the quiet streets after dinner, "when I hired you, I thought I was solving a staffing problem. I had no idea I was finding someone who would change everything about how I see my work and my life." Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him. "James, this year has been the most challenging and rewarding of my career. Not just because of the students, but because of working with someone who shares my values and supports my vision for what education can be." Their relationship developed slowly and naturally over the following months, built on a foundation of shared purpose and mutual respect. They discovered that their partnership in education was only the beginning of what they could accomplish together. The partnership program between Westbrook Academy and Riverside Elementary became a model for other schools, demonstrating how children from different backgrounds could learn from each other while developing empathy and understanding across economic lines. Marcus Thompson, with support from both Victoria and the program they had created, earned a scholarship to attend Westbrook Academy the following year. His academic abilities, nurtured by Victoria's early intervention and encouragement, flourished in an environment where he had access to resources and opportunities that matched his potential. Mrs. Crawford, Marcus said during his graduation speech 3 years later, taught me that being smart isn't enough. You have to be kind too. And you have to be willing to help other people be their best selves, even when it's hard. Victoria, now married to James and serving as the assistant principal at Westbrook Academy, felt tears of pride as she watched Marcus accept his diploma. The hungry, tired 8-year-old who had fallen asleep at his desk had grown into a confident, compassionate young man who would attend college on a full scholarship and planned to become a teacher himself. You did that? James whispered to her as they applauded Marcus's speech. Your willingness to put his needs first, even when it cost you your job, changed the trajectory of his entire life. Victoria shook her head, squeezing her husband's hand. We did that. You created an environment where kindness could flourish, where children from different worlds could learn from each other. You took a chance on a teacher who had been fired for caring too much. I took a chance on a teacher who understood what education is really about. James corrected gently, and in doing so, I found not just an incredible educator, but the love of my life. As they watched Marcus walk across the stage, surrounded by classmates who had learned to see beyond economic differences to human potential, Victoria reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. She had been fired for protecting a poor child, branded as someone who couldn't follow proper procedures. But that apparent failure had led her to a place where she could influence not just individual students, but entire communities, where she could help privileged children understand their responsibilities to others and help disadvantaged children see their own worth and potential. You know, Victoria said to James as they walked home together after the graduation ceremony, I used to think that losing my job at Riverside Elementary was the worst thing that could have happened to me. But now I see it was actually the best thing. Why? James asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Because it led me to you, to Westbrook Academy, to a place where I could help build bridges between different worlds. It taught me that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beginning. James smiled, the expression that had first told Victoria he was someone she could trust and love. My grandmother used to say that life has a way of putting the right people in the right place at the right time, if we're brave enough to recognize the opportunities when they come. Your grandmother was a wise woman, Victoria said, echoing the words James had spoken about her own grandmother years ago. She was. I think she would have loved you. Another teacher who believes that kindness and high standards aren't opposites, but partners in helping children reach their potential. As they reached their home, a modest house near the school where they could often be found grading papers together at the kitchen table or planning new programs to serve their students, Victoria thought about the ripple effects of kindness and courage. One decision to help a hungry child had cost her a job, but gained her a calling. One principal's willingness to see potential rather than problems had created opportunities for countless students to grow beyond their circumstances. One partnership program had demonstrated that children could learn to see past economic differences to human worth. James, Victoria said as they settled on their front porch to watch the sunset, do you think we're making a difference? James looked at her with the kind of love that comes from truly knowing and admiring someone. Victoria, we're changing the world one student at a time. Marcus Thompson is going to college and plans to become a teacher. Catherine Pemberton is organizing social justice initiatives at her high school. Dozens of other children have learned that their privilege comes with responsibility, and that kindness is both a choice and a duty. Victoria nodded, feeling the deep satisfaction that comes from work that matters. My grandmother always said that teaching was the only profession where you could change the world one person at a time. Your grandmother was right, James replied, taking her hand in the gesture that had become as natural as breathing. And you've proven that sometimes the greatest changes come from the smallest acts of courage. Like refusing to let a child go hungry, even when it costs you everything. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Victoria reflected on the truth that had shaped her entire career. That education at its best is about more than academic achievement. It's about developing human beings who understand their connection to each other, who have both the knowledge to succeed and the character to use that success in service of something greater than themselves. The teacher who had been fired for protecting a poor child had become the assistant principal who helped create a school community where protection and high expectations went hand in hand. The principal who had taken a chance on a controversial hire had found not just an exceptional educator, but a partner in building the kind of school where every child could flourish. And somewhere in the city, former students from both Westbrook Academy and Riverside Elementary were growing into adults who understood that true success is measured not by what you accumulate, but by how you lift others up along the way. The story of Victoria Hayes and James Crawford became legendary in educational circles, not because it was dramatic, but because it was simple, a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes begin with one person's willingness to do what's right, even when it's difficult, and another person's courage to support them when others turn away. In the end, Victoria learned that being fired for protecting a child hadn't been a professional disaster. It had been a calling to something greater, a chance to help shape not just individual students, but entire communities, one act of kindness at a time.